One feature many of our customers can look forward to is the ability to pause appointments. It often happens that field staff get assigned appointments for the whole day, and within that day, of course, there are going to be some breaks taken. And for the most part, these are not going to be billable to the customer. Having a way to pause the appointment allows for more accurate tracking of the time for billing. And similar to how we're able to start and stop the time for appointments, we can do the same for pausing it. So you can do it at the appointment level or at the individual service level. Now let's open an appointment that's already in process on the app so we can see how the pausing behavior works. So you go to the appointment and it's just a matter of hitting pause appointment. Now what that does, it keeps a log of the previous time that we were active. So you can see here. And all of these logs, time logs, are then accumulated or aggregated to form what your billable appointment time is. And that works on the cost side as well for your employee. So now if we restart the appointment again, we can see that another log entry is created. 2021 also introduces the ability to book appointments of more than one day. In the past, appointments were limited to being on a single day. If a job was to be for multiple days, the common workaround was to maintain multiple appointments for the service order, which tended to be tedious, especially if a job was to run for several days. Here's an example of an appointment that runs for multiple days. So if you look at the scheduled date and time on here, so in the previous versions, you would see that we only had a single date and a start and end time. Now starting 2021.1, you can also set an end date for your appointment. And for the time, you can just set the start and end times for each of the working days. Now if we look at the calendar, we do see that the appointment runs for multiple days on there too. When it comes to actually doing the appointment, you can use the new pause and resume feature so that you can pause it at the end of the day and then resume it at the start of the next day. This allows you to still keep track of accurate time for each day that you work on site. Field service transaction screens now include the Add Items button, like what we see on sales orders and shipments. This allows for quicker viewing of stock levels of an item across all warehouses and locations. Let's take a look at a service order here as an example. So in the past, if I added an inventory item, I would usually rely on the numbers that either I see here, or I would need to go through each of my warehouses on here and look at my individual locations on from the location pop-out screen. Now I can just simply go to Add Items, similar to what we do with sales orders, and look for our item there, and immediately see every stock that we have from all the warehouse and locations that we have. One of the limitations in the field services module was the inability to add multiple lot or serial numbers for a single inventory line. This was an issue for instances where a job would require more than one of a particular item. The usual workaround was to add multiple lines of the same item to indicate the different lots and serial numbers, which isn't always ideal, especially when you have a large number of items. With 2021.1, the lot and serial numbers button was added to remedy this. So here's an example of an appointment using a serial track inventory item. Right, so for this one, we have a quantity of 10, and previously what tended to happen was that you could only assign one serial number for each line, so you would have 10 different lines for these items. Now, with the introduction of the lot serial numbers, you can just assign the serial numbers here. As part of this change as well, if you go into the service order type screen, there's a new tick box that allows you to control whether you want to copy the lot and serial numbers to the appointment from service orders. By default, it will be ticked, but you can turn it off depending on what the requirement is. This just allows for greater flexibility, as some business would prefer for the serial numbers to be assigned only at the appointment stage, so they do not need the whatever nominated serial number is from the service order. With jobs, it's common for a technician to identify parts that need to be purchased during the appointment itself. In the older versions of Advanced, this presented an issue because purchase orders could only be raised against service orders. The field technician would then have to contact the office, so a service manager can raise the PO against the service order. With 2021.1, a purchase order can be raised from the appointment itself. The technician would also have the choice of which document the purchase order will be linked to. Now, to see that in action, let's look at this appointment for a repair job. So let's say that the field technician is already on site. So the appointment can now be started. Now, as the job is ongoing, if they identify that there's a part that needs to be replaced and needs to be ordered, you can easily add a line on here for the inventory item now. And with 2021.1, we have that mark for PO tick box that we used to only have with service orders. So you can mark it for a purchase order now. And I've given two options of how I want to treat that purchase order. So you can either choose to set it to be linked to my appointment, meaning I will continue to use this appointment to install that part, or alternatively, I can select to have it linked to the service order, so I can reschedule another appointment later on to do the installation. Let's select that now. And once I save this, I can then see that this appointment in particular is not waiting for any purchased items. So you can proceed to actually closing this appointment. Now, if I go to the service order, I'll then see that I still have that inventory item that's requiring scheduling, and I'm still waiting for its purchase. Now I can just proceed as I would in the previous versions, where I go to create purchase order, and it takes me to the purchase order creation screen. Now, alternatively, you can also choose to link the purchase order to the appointment itself. If you want to continue using the same appointment to schedule the installation of that new part. So for that, we set it to purchase to appointment. And you can create the purchase order now from the appointment screen as well. This can be done from the app as well. So if you open up an appointment and go to a specific line item on here for inventory, we can see that we can tag it as well to purchase. And once the purchase order is raised, that information is going to get fed back to the app as well. An important aspect in understanding the profitability of each job is the ability to keep track of a technician's on-site expenses, like meals, travel, or items that they bought for the job. In the past, although the technicians had a way to claim these expenses, they were not linked to the job itself. So we were not able to capture the cost against the job or pass that on and bill that on automatically to the customer. Now with 2021.1, we've introduced creating an expense receipt from the appointment itself. Here's an example of how we can do that in the system. So if I take my appointment here, I can just click on the Create Expense Receipt button, and it takes me to the standard expense receipt screen. Say I enter some incidental expenses on there, and set my amount. We can see too at the bottom that the expense receipt is tagged against the appointment. An important thing to note here is that if an expense receipt is created against an appointment, we will not be able to edit it directly on the expense receipt screen. You can also set it to billable if you're going to be charging it on to the customer. So if I take this now and save this, I can go back to my appointment, and see that I've got some expenses on there. And if you notice, that's taken away from my profit already. And if you look at my profitability, since I haven't billed out this appointment, I can see that it's being captured as a cost. So the same can be done on the app. So the advantage of using the app is you already have the camera. So when you step out of the cafe or the hardware store, you can just take a photo of the receipt and enter it into against the job. So you click on the expense receipt on there, it opens up the expense receipt screen, and similar to how it's done on the desktop, whatever cost is entered on that expense receipt will be captured into your appointment as well. And if you do choose to bill that out, as long as you select the billable option, that's going to be included in your invoice.